Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the Free Minds Thrive podcast. My name is Bobby Vincench. As you may or may not know at this point, if you saw episode 1, you're familiar with me. If not, welcome. Welcome, and nice to meet you. So today we're going to be focused on the idea and the concept of truth. We're going to talk about truth, why it's important to put it above all other things. And many people have their priorities all mixed up and all over the place. And while in the end you get to choose where you focus your time, how intentional you are in your life, what you determine and decide to be true, that's all up to you. But truth doesn't really care what you think, does it? The objective truth that stands out there, true all the time, whether or not people believe it or not, whether or not people know it or not, whether or not people want to hear it or not, the truth is there on almost every matter, every subject, every topic, in every area of life and existence. It's just a matter of whether or not you have tapped into it or not, whether or not you are even looking for it or open to it to be able to benefit from the truth. And we're not just talking about facts and information that you use to make decisions in your life, but also the truth about who you are. How many people don't really know who they are? Or they have a feeling and a sense about who they are, but they're afraid to share it with the world. The world doesn't know who you are because you're not being truthful and authentic about it. Maybe you're afraid of being judged or standing out or being different. Or maybe you're afraid that the friends you have and the people around you now that are around you because of a past chapter of your life and the way you used to be may no longer accept you or want to be with you on your journey if you move forward and you evolve and you change and grow. There's a lot of different reasons people don't express truly who they are. And one thing, of course, to keep in mind when I say that is that you don't stay the same person forever. So some people might be a little bit afraid of change, or a lot afraid of change, right? Put your hand up if you're very afraid of change in your life. We change as people. Every chapter of our life, we're learning new things, experiencing new things, and we are changing and evolving. We're physically changing all the time, mentally changing all the time, spiritually changing all the time. So the truth about who you are as an individual, a unique individual who's on your own journey, that's important too. I know a lot of people who don't even know who they are. They have very little idea about their own identity. Maybe they live too much for others. Maybe they're used to giving to others because they've always done that or had to do it for any number of reasons. Or maybe that's what they like to do. That's how they operate. They're givers. But you can give too much, right? You can give too much and lose yourself. Even when you become a parent to a child or children, you lose a lot of yourself. Of course, you gain a lot of yourself in many ways through your children and your experience with them. But there's not as much time spent on just you. Because now you've got others to look out for who, for many of you, you care about more than you even care about yourself. So you put everything into them. They are your pride and joy and your ultimate focus and priority, as they should be. But we forget about ourselves in the process. We lose ourselves. So we're not just talking about what's true about the world, although that is a major focus of this episode. It also applies to the truth about you, and not being afraid to know who you really are, to express who you really are, and to evolve into who you're becoming. That's important too. But let's talk a little bit about truth in the context of discovering truth about the world that we're all in. Discovering truth so we can make better decisions in our life, regarding our life and our family and our community, so we can live better and thrive. In my life, truth has always been very, very important. And I discovered, I don't know just about when, maybe in my teen years, maybe in my 20s, as somewhere in my young adult life, I discovered that not a lot of people really care about the truth. I don't think it's that people necessarily know that truth is out there and decided not to care. I think the system that we live in, the world that we live in, pushes us in the direction of not worrying about truth not caring about truth, and even being very confused and mixed up about what truth is. Because if you think about it, with search engines and now AI on the rise as of this recording in the world, or at least now we're being introduced to it, it's probably been around a long time, we think we have the truth because we have access to quick answers. And we think if something's there as a quick answer, well, somebody must have researched it, somebody must have put thought into it, it must be true. But in reality, this is an authoritarian's dream world, isn't it? This is a tyrant's dream world. I hate to say it because people don't like to hear it, but this is the Nazi German regime's dream. A world in which people don't even care to look into whether things are true or not. If the government says it, if corporations say it, if the approved authorities have said it, and claim to have studies and all sorts of things to back up their claim, well, then it must be true. Why do I need to go through all the work looking into things if they've already done it for me? And by the way, they are the experts and the authorities. Of course they're right. But as those of us in the know are aware of, well, that's not true at all. And they're in a perfect position to manipulate you and tell you lies, flat out. Just tell you lies. And you would have no clue. Now, when I say you would have no clue, I'm obviously not talking to everybody in the audience. I understand that there are people in the audience who know exactly what I'm talking about. They get it. And even us guys, those of us who consider ourselves to be truth seekers and truth speakers, we don't have the whole truth. We'd like to think we do, because we put a lot of effort and energy into ensuring that we have as much of the truth as possible. But I honestly believe that not a single human being on earth has access to the whole and full and complete truth. That is perhaps something that is only in the realm of God. Only God knows the whole truth, right? Whatever and whoever God is. And some of you are thinking, well, God doesn't exist. You're looking for truth and you're talking about God? Yes. I think you have to be a fool to look around you every day at all of the things that have a clear design and purpose and function in the world and not acknowledge that there was a designer behind it. It's even crazier to me that you've got engineers, scientists, you've got people who literally create things that did not exist before. People who make video games and computer software and hardware and electric vehicles and rocket ships and all sorts of stuff. These people had an idea and then went out there and created things from scratch. And they know that if they came across the type of thing they made out there in the wild, they wouldn't even second guess that it was made by somebody with a conscious, intelligent mind. And yet we look around at the natural world around us, which all humans know we did not make. We did not make the trees and the dirt and the soil and the planets and all the forces of the universe and all the rules and regulations that govern it. We know we didn't do that. We are not the reason that certain butterflies have a pattern of an owl eye on them to scare away predators. We did not create chameleons that can change skin color to match their environment. We did not create the beauty out there in the world that us and other creatures look at and recognize and live amongst. We did not do any of that. And yet there are people so outrageously clueless, so bought into this concept that there is not a God, there is not a creator, because they're stuck on this idea that if there's a God or a creator, it must be one of the religions. And they're arguing with the religion, not realizing that there could still be God, and it could have nothing to do with the religions. God exists outside and external of the religions. The religions came after God. God came first, before them. Right? So you really have to argue the idea of design. And that's clear enough. There is no engineer that would come across a rocket ship in the middle of a desert and think that it just formed over time through evolution. Not a single one would ever say that, but they'll tell you, Well, that's not the same as looking at the world and all of the design and rules and regulations in it. That is not the same as saying that that has a designer. Oh, no, of course not. Cells dividing to create new life. A beautiful woman, pregnant, with a child in her womb, and that child growing from almost nothing, just a code, and cells that self-divide and multiply in exactly the right places, in exactly the right ways, to form a fully functional human. Nobody else is involved in the process, just nature. Nature and whatever's behind it, whatever design is behind the engineering of that process. Whatever program was programmed to lay out and play out that process. You look at that and you say, no, that doesn't have an engineer, that doesn't have a designer. Outrageous, how unscientific. As if science is a religion itself. As if science is a set of dogmatic principles that are fixed and cannot be changed. Science is ever changing, you fools. Science is a process. It's a process to try to find the truth about this physical world we live in. Science has blind spots, by the way, because it is only based in the physical world, and must, by the nature of the way it functions, ignore all things beyond the physical. And so in the realm of imagination, in the realm of human intuition, our ability to think about things beyond the physical world, science can't see any of that or contemplate it because much of it can't be proven. But yet the most outrageous thing about it is that people think science somehow disproves God. Science proves God. It proves God. Now, that's of course my opinion, right? You could say, Bobby, my truth is that that's not true. Or, Bobby, I have determined that there is no God. Okay, well, chances are when you say that, you are arguing against a Christian worldview. You're trying to argue that God is not some old man sitting on a throne behind pearly gates on the top of clouds, right? Sitting there with his white beard and his white hair and maybe a white robe or something, judging you as you come up and stand online and say, I hope I get into heaven and not hell. I'm not here today in this particular episode to debate the legitimacy of that or not. I am not part of an organized religion, but I do believe in God. I do believe in a designer. I do believe creation is evident all around us. Now, is God the purpose of this episode? Is God the reason that we're all here together today? Not exactly, but in many ways, yes. Because we want to step outside the box of our current beliefs. We want to challenge ourselves in an honest and authentic way to try to find the truth. And if nothing else, the truth comes from somewhere. It has a source. It comes from some place. It's not just an observation of the reality around us. It's the reality of the reality around us. Where does that come from? How did things come to be? And if you can't acknowledge something as simple and as basic as the evident design all around us, and have a very honest, open conversation about whether or not that means something or whether or not there's a truth behind it, if you can't have that conversation, you're going to have a really hard time with a lot of other things. Now, am I saying that if you don't believe in God, you can't find the truth? No, you can find certain truths in the world without believing in God. This is not an episode to convince you that God exists. And as I've said in episode 1, I am curious, I am open-minded, I have a free mind, and I want to find the truth. So I am always exposing myself to information and perspectives and ideas that challenge what I'm saying. I went from being a Roman Catholic, born and raised. We did go to church on Sundays, most Sundays anyway. We did say prayers at dinner. We really were not a Bible reading family, but we still were told we believed in Jesus, right? So for me, I went from that to saying, well, I don't really align with what the church is saying in that I don't believe it's true. But I do think there's some kind of God, don't I? And I'm like, no, because every time people talk about God, it's always about the Christian God, and so must not be true. And that's because that's what I was exposed to, right? But as I got into my teen years, I just went complete cynic and critic and said, well, then there's no God. You know, if the Christian God is not true to me at the time, right? If the Christian God is not God, then there must be no God. So I said, I'm an atheist. But then time went by and I just couldn't get past this idea that there is some kind of God. So I was like, there's some kind of God. I must be an agnostic because I don't really know that we can prove it one way or the other. I mean, I know we can't, right? Because if the proof is always, well, the Bible says it's true, or atheists say it's impossible, or someone else says, hey, there's design all around us. Well, that doesn't directly prove God, right? Because you can't show me God. And yet at the same time, that's kind of what God is. God is everything. So it's a tough one. But I said I must be at least an agnostic because I can't prove it one way or the other. And so I'm not really sure one way or the other. Then I paid more attention to science, the scientific process, and looking at nature and looking at just how things are and realizing that there must be something behind the things that are unexplainable. There's something enforcing electromagnetism and gravity or whatever other forces there are in our world that have an end point or a beginning point that we can't see past. Like, who makes gravity work? How exactly does gravity work if there's no code, there's no machine, there's no mechanism? It just is. It just is. And that led me down the path of exploring alternative ways of considering what a creator and what God could be. And I discovered, you know what? I'm not going to put a label on it. Like most things in my life now, I don't really put a label on myself, or I try not to. And that is to maintain my free mind, to maintain, my independence so I can think through things. I don't want to be stuck to a label. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm not a Christian or an atheist. I'm always exploring, and I have current ideas that need to be explained in full. I'm not just going to say a label and then that explains it. No, I have to explain it. There's the description, the substance of the argument is what matters more than the label that supposedly represents it. So I can say I believe in God, I believe in a creator, I'm a God believer, but then people have all sorts of interpretations of what that means, right? They have assumptions. So I really prefer real conversations. So when it comes to God, I said, yeah, I think God's real. I think by looking at science, by looking at nature, there is a God, but it's not, to me anyway, this is not a reason. Again, keep that open mind, guys. We're here to find truth and discuss with each other. But it's not the Christian God to me. I just don't see it. I just don't get it. I even read the Bible recently, actually. I even picked up a copy of the Bible, started reading it. I know there's different versions. I picked the one that seemed like it made the most sense to read. And first couldn't get past the idea that I'm reading, a translation of a translation. and who knows how many times it's been changed, and I'm not going to go back and study the original words and what they actually meant. And other people are doing that, and that's fine. But if it takes that much work to find God, then God is not as intelligent as I believe God is, right? I think God's proof of itself, not that it needs it, but the evidence that God exists is all around us in the simplest, most universal possible way. It's not complicated. It doesn't require a lifetime of study and translations and debating. There's so many Christians who disagree with each other, so many Catholics who disagree with each other about the littlest things. And I just don't think that that's how God expects us to work to discover that God's real or to figure out what God wants or intends. And so I did determine that God's real. Now, how did this whole episode so far get spent talking about God? Well, I guess because part of me believes wholly and fully and truly that, truth comes from somewhere. And also that if we can't really be honest and have a fair conversation about certain topics, then are we really serious and genuine and authentic about finding the truth? And I think when I speak to most people on most topics, they're really not. It's either that they want to be right about what they already believe, or if it's not that they want to be right about what they already believe, they just don't care enough. And some people pretend they care enough, right? They have a strong opinion about something just to say they have an opinion, but they haven't actually thought it through. And that kind of, I don't want to say irks me a little bit, but it's definitely a very curious thing. It's like, how can you have such a strong opinion that defines you, and yet you sound like you have no idea what the heck you're talking about? That's not good. So what I ask of everyone here, no matter where you fall in your interest in seeking the truth at this point, no matter how hardcore you are about your opinions or how much you just don't really care. I ask you to stay open-minded and free in your mind to explore possibilities that maybe you haven't considered. Because you don't want to live your whole life based on mistruths, based on untruths, based on lies, based on propaganda, based on bad information, false information, however you want to see those things. Misinformation and disinformation, two words I absolutely despise. I can't stand those words. But that being said, truth is important, and truth does not come from the government, and truth does not come from corporations, and truth does not even come from experts, by the way. While you should certainly consider an expert's opinion in the context of what they know, who they are, how accomplished they are, and all of that, you should also consider how the experts were trained to become experts, right? If an expert was trained in such a way that they're really just regurgitating and repeating and parroting what they were taught, well, they're not really experts in the way that I would want an expert to be an expert. I want people who explored ideas with an open mind. I want people who went out there and challenged the status quo. They challenged the ideas that are currently out there in order to find the truth, whether that means proving those original ideas correct or discovering that they're wrong. And experts don't really do that, many of them, do they? They're taught a certain way and then they just go and do that thing because they spent a lot of time in school and studying and succeeding in some of these fields, like being a doctor, for instance, in the Western medical field, takes a lot of work and a lot of time, and then they're kept busy as they are doctors. There's a lot of considerations. There's a lot of things that keep them from being able to explore on their own, so they just go with what they've learned. But even doctors, for instance, are not taught a lot about nutrition, and yet nutrition is arguably the most important underlying foundational element of your health. The nutritional aspect of the food you eat, the nutritional density and quality of the foods you eat, plays a major, massive role in how healthy you are. Not just the foods you eat, not just how much of the different foods you eat, and that might even be wrong. We'll definitely be discussing in a future episode the food pyramid and what really equals good health and what considerations there are out there, because there's a lot of information that's just wrong. And these experts many times are just, I hate to say it because I don't mean to be offensive, right? If I need to go to a doctor with a broken leg, right, or something that's really wrong, like some traumatic incident, or I have a heart attack, God forbid, or something like that, I really want a doctor who can get me right back to good health, who can respond to that thing and make me better. But they're not very good at proactive good health, right? They're good at being reactive. So doctors mean well, I truly believe many of them mean well, but they're trained in a system that's designed to make money off sick people. So when you know that and you recognize that and you see that, when you see that they're not trained very much at all, a few hours, they don't know much about nutrition. Nutrition is key to good health. And yet they just don't know. So when they talk to you about good health and they talk to you about what's good and right and true about your health, how to stay healthy, how to, get rid of a quote unquote illness or disease, when they look at those things, all they're really doing is regurgitating what they learned. Almost none of them, went out there and explored things and tried to find truth about health and then came up with their own practice. They got licensed in a certain field based on a certain set of knowledge under the umbrella of a certain perspective about health. And quite frankly, I think most of it is wrong. So that means most Western medical doctors might be wrong. And we'll talk quite a bit about that throughout various episodes about health, hopefully talking to people who can share some things that maybe you haven't heard before, or maybe you have, and it'll just be new information to consider or reinforcing information. And for some of you that are so convinced your doctor has all the answers, because that's what we've all been told all our lives, that's what the TV shows and the movies have shown. He just knows what he knows, and he's gone through more training than most people ever go through in their field of employment or their field of expertise. And yet, what exactly did they learn, and how does that affect the truth about what they're saying is good health? I happen to believe the healthcare system, one word, is not really health space care. Health space care, caring for your health, is not what the healthcare system is about. The healthcare system is a business, and it thrives off of your sickness and illness. And if you know that, do you think that nearly anything they say about what you should do for your health is right? It's crazy. They almost never talk about food and diet, nutrition. Now, am I picking on the medical field? A little bit, yes. It's one of the most important and influential factors on your ability to thrive in the world. Your ability to thrive in the world depends on your understanding of the truth about what health is. Why? Because your health is your wealth. Your health is your wealth. So if you are not healthy, if you can't get up every day with energy, if you're sick all the time and popping pills that give you all these different side effects, and you take pills for the pills you take, and you take pills for those pills that you take because of all the side effects, and you're constantly just in a pharmaceutical experiment. If that's the case, and if you're always sick and not feeling good and not getting good sleep and just don't have that energy and you can't focus and so on and so forth, how can you thrive? And so we need the truth about health. And yet, how many of you have read books about health? I mean, if you're watching this podcast, chances are you're probably one of those people who has. But how many of you really go outside of the mainstream concepts and ideas that you see in this world we live in? What some people consider to be something like the Matrix, where we live in this false world, this simulation of what the real world is. And it's a simulation designed to keep us imprisoned, in a sense. Imprisoned because knowledge is power. And if you have false knowledge, that is, you have information about the world that is not true, and you're basing your decisions and your life on it, you're basing your health decisions on it, and you're basing your financial decisions on it, you're basing how you handle and deal with your relationships, you're basing everything you do on the things you know. And so you can imagine that if you live in a world of propaganda and lies, and if that world has convinced you that your avenues and methods for finding the truth, doing an online search, listening to quote unquote the experts, looking to see what the government tells you about something, all that stuff and so on and so forth, that if that's where the truth comes from, well then whatever they say, you're going to believe. And if you do that and they're lying to you, which governments and authorities have been doing since the beginning of mankind, trying to manipulate people in order to what? Control them. See, this is what a lot of you don't realize. That the people in control who want to control you, because they want to maintain their control over you, they don't like you very much. In fact, I would even go as far as to say that they hate you, some of them. I'm talking about the people at the very top. They don't like you very much. They think they're better than you, and therefore they look down on you. And once you understand this and acknowledge this about the world, once you have this basic truth established, it becomes a lot easier to question what you're being told and what you've been told. It becomes a lot easier to challenge yourself on the things that you've believed all your life, because you say, wait a second, who told me those things? What industry made the movies and the TV shows and the music that taught me things about the world, that told me what's important to think about and contemplate, that gave me my priorities, that made me think there's a certain way you have to live life, there's a certain order of things and a certain way you have to do things and so on? Who are those people? What do they think about me? Well, they hate you. And this is the first and most difficult truth, above all the other truths that perhaps you have to recognize to even benefit from what we're doing here in these discussions. I won't always be right, and neither will you. But I will be more right than most people because I'm questioning the status quo. I'm questioning what I've been told because I've recognized that so much of it is not true. And I put truth above all else because I understand that with the truth, with knowledge and information and wisdom, I can thrive. But without it, I'm at a disadvantage. I cannot thrive. And I want to thrive. And I know that's why you're here. You want to thrive with a free mind. But you've got to free your mind first. You've got to open it up to the idea that you may not know everything, that there may be truth out there that you have not accessed yet, that you need to access, that you deserve to know, and to know that certain people are trying to hide it from you, certain people are trying to tell you things that are not true and get you to really believe that, because then they can control you, because they have the truth and you do not. And that doesn't have to just be people at the top of the pyramid of society and the world. It could be your friends, your family manipulating you, your boss, strangers, right? You need to know how to find truth. One way to do that is to really practice your critical thinking skills so you can get better and sharper at determining what's true and what's false, what is logical and illogical. And we'll talk about some of those things throughout certain episodes, but today I just wanted to say, put truth above all things. Start to prioritize finding the truth and challenging yourself so that you can have the information you need to live the best life possible. Okay? Because other people know this and they understand the importance of this, but most people prioritize scrolling on TikTok, watching random videos on social media, binge watching Netflix, eating crappy food, all the things, listening to the experts who may not always know what they're talking about and may not be right because they are not gods. And when you do that, what ends up happening? Well, what ends up happening is you end up in a situation where you're not in control of your own life. Other people are. You end up in a situation where you're making bad choices because, well, you don't know any better. And this is not good. And so we're going to put truth above all things, my friends, except maybe love, which perhaps comes above truth, or maybe alongside truth. Love and truth. Love and truth together. Those are the two most important things. But truth in particular needs to be something you start thinking a lot more about if you're not doing it already. You should hold it in such high regard and understand that it's your personal responsibility to yourself, to your family, to your community, to the world, to get out there and find truth as best as you can. I'm going to leave you with this. If you haven't already seen it, if you're not familiar with it, go check out Plato's Allegory of the Cave. You can read The Republic, which is Plato's work that has the allegory in it, or you could just go on YouTube or something like that and watch a couple of different videos to see how they represent what the allegory means. There's some really good videos that I have seen. I try to watch a couple of different ones in order to get a few different perspectives because, like anything, depending on the person representing something, you could get quite a different perspective. I'm a big fan of, when you're seeking the truth, going to the original source. So if you can go read The Cave Allegory by Plato, read that scene, or even read the entire work to better understand, the broader context, great. But if you're not going to, or you're unwilling to, at least then, if you're going to watch people's interpretations of the original thing, watch a few different ones from a few different types of sources so that you can kind of average them out to understand what it means. Compare and contrast different interpretations of something in order to get the best idea of what that thing actually is or actually means. So check it out, Allegory of the Cave. It'll give you a great idea of the importance of truth, the importance of putting yourself out there, and the challenges involved in doing that. Because it's not always easy or convenient. And other people, honestly, are going to hate on you for it. And they're going to make your life more challenging for being somebody who is thinking outside the box and challenging ideas that other people have a false sense of comfort and security living by. And so just understand that, but definitely check that out. Allegory of the Cave, and definitely let me know what you think about that. All right. So guys, it's been great being here with you today. I hope I was able to express some of the importance of why truth should be placed above other things, except perhaps love, and why it's so important to know the truth so you can thrive in life. We're going to spend a lot of time here, of course, seeking the truth together, and so I look forward to being on that journey with you guys and sharing what it is I'm thinking about, how it is I'm thinking about it, and hearing your perspectives on the things that I share and where you agree and disagree with me and where there's room for all of us to explore together. All right, everyone, take care. Hope you have an amazing day. Get out there and find the truth.